Welcome. Today's story is one that will touch your heart and leave you on the edge of your seat. Imagine a mother's desperate fight to save her newborn twins, a fragile baby elephant struggling to survive, and a ruthless gang of poachers lurking in the shadows. In the heart of Yellowstone National Park, a rare and miraculous event unfolds, but danger is never far away. Will Marula, the brave mother elephant, be able to protect her calves? Will the rangers succeed in stopping the poachers before it's too late? Stay with me as we dive into this emotional and action-packed story of survival, resilience, and justice. But before we begin, let me know, where are you watching from today? Comment below and let's get started. The golden light of the late afternoon sun draped over the vast expanse of Yellowstone National Park, casting long shadows across the dry earth. A warm breeze rustled through the tall grass, carrying the distant sounds of the wild, the occasional roar of a mountain lion, the chatter of unseen birds, and the deep, rhythmic rumbles of elephants communicating across the land. From the wooden observation deck of the Yellowstone Ranger Station, Dr. Ethan Carter adjusted his binoculars, narrowing his gaze at a lone figure standing near a sparse cluster of acacia trees. The matriarch of the herd, Marula, was behaving strangely. She shifted her weight from one massive foot to the other, her ears flicking back and forth in agitation, her trunk curling toward her belly in slow, deliberate movements. Something was wrong. Beside Ethan, David Mitchell, the most seasoned ranger in the park, observed in silence, his years of experience telling him that this was not just discomfort. It was something more. Sophia Reed, the youngest member of the team, flipped through her notes. Just yesterday, Marula had been grazing normally near the watering hole, showing no signs of distress. But today, she had barely moved, her movements sluggish and uncertain. A silent exchange passed between Ethan and David. Two possible explanations hovered over them like a storm cloud. Marula was either sick, or she was in labor. And if she was sick, the consequences could be catastrophic. Anthrax had once swept through the region, wiping out entire elephant families. The thought made Ethan's stomach tighten. But as he observed Marula more closely, there were no telltale signs of disease, no mucus around her trunk, no labored breathing, no tremors. She's pregnant, Ethan murmured, realization sinking in. David exhaled slowly. That's rare at her age. And she's alone. That's even rarer. The herd wasn't far, but they had given Marula space. Sensing something significant was happening, the younger females stood at a distance, ears twitching, their massive bodies shifting uneasily. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Marula's condition worsened as the minutes dragged on. Her restless shifting turned into prolonged stillness, her breathing growing heavier. A fully grown elephant collapsing could be fatal. If she went down, she might never get back up. Ethan knew they had little time. We have to intervene. David hesitated. You know what happens if we interfere. Stress could make her abandon the birthing process. And if we do nothing? Sophia interjected, worry lacing her voice. If she weakens, we lose both her and the calf. That was enough to make David nod. The decision was made. The team moved swiftly, but cautiously. Approaching an elephant in distress was dangerous, especially a matriarch with a watchful herd nearby. They prepared a tranquilizer dart, just enough to relax Marula without sedating her completely. Ethan hated using sedatives, but there was no other way. The dart landed with a soft thud. Marula flinched but did not react aggressively. Slowly, her breathing steadied, her muscles relaxing just enough for them to act. David and Sophia worked quickly. Sophia prepared an IV, her hands trembling slightly as she inserted the needle into one of Marula's thick ear veins. Dehydration was a concern. Ethan pressed his stethoscope against her belly, searching for signs of the calf. When he heard a faint heartbeat, relief flooded through him. The baby's alive, he whispered, but there was no time to celebrate. The night settled over Yellowstone, draping the land in velvety darkness. A distant howl echoed through the silence, a reminder that the wild never truly sleeps. Marula stood alone, her body swaying slightly. Her instincts told her what the humans now realized. This was no ordinary birth. This was a struggle for survival. Pain rippled through her body, stronger and sharper than before. She braced herself, lifting her head, letting out a deep, resonant bellow. The herd answered from a distance. They knew. They would come if she called again. A powerful push, and suddenly, the first calf slipped into the world. A small, wet body collapsed onto the dry earth, its tiny trunk curling and uncurling as it fought to take its first breath. Marula, exhausted, turned toward her newborn, nudging him gently. A boy, Tamu. He was weak, but he was alive. But Marula knew it wasn't over. Another contraction seized her. Pain, sharp, unrelenting. Something stirred inside her. This wasn't supposed to happen. A second life was waiting. With one last agonizing push, another newborn slipped onto the ground. A girl, Lainey, tiny, fragile, struggling. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The herd, sensing the miracle, moved closer. Marula had done something almost unheard of in the wild. She had given birth to twins. But there was no time for celebration. Lainey was weak, too weak. She barely moved, her frail limbs trembling as she tried to lift herself. Marula, despite her own exhaustion, refused to give up. She nudged Lainey again and again, willing her to rise. Tamu stood strong, already learning to balance on unsteady legs. But Lainey collapsed each time she tried. From the observation deck, Ethan and the team watched with growing anxiety. Hours passed, and Lainey barely nursed. Her small body heaved with effort, her breath coming in shallow, uneven gasps. She won't make it through the night at this rate, David muttered. Sophia bit her lip, eyes filled with determination. We have to do something. We can't just stand here and watch her die. But it wasn't that simple. Intervening could disrupt the delicate bond between Marula and her calf. If they stepped in now, they had to be careful, not just for Lainey's sake, but for the entire herd. Ethan weighed the risks. We help her, but only enough to stabilize her. No sedation, no separation from her mother. Just fluids and support. David exhaled, nodding reluctantly. Then we better move fast. As the team scrambled into action, none of them realized that miles away, in the thick underbrush near the Montana-Wyoming border, another group had already heard about the twin calves. A group with far deadlier plans. The night was still over Yellowstone National Park, but an uneasy tension hung in the air. The distant calls of nocturnal predators echoed across the wilderness, and a strong wind carried the scent of something unnatural. Dr. Ethan Carter stood on the observation deck, his hands gripping the railing as he scanned the horizon. His instincts told him something wasn't right. Below, the herd remained close together, forming a protective circle around Marula and her newborns. Lainey lay curled up against her mother, her small body shivering, while Tamu stood on wobbly legs, staying close to his family. Sophia Reed, crouched beside them, whispered soft reassurances as she watched Lainey struggle to lift her head. She's not getting stronger, Sophia murmured. David Mitchell, standing nearby, shook his head. She's dehydrated, and her energy reserves are almost gone. If we don't act soon, she won't make it. Ethan sighed. He had spent his career fighting to protect wildlife. But this was different. This was personal. All right, he said finally. We go in. No sedation. No separation from her mother. Just fluids and support. Sophia nodded, her determination unwavering. Let's do it. The team moved quickly, gathering medical supplies. David prepared a hydration pack while Ethan readied a syringe with vital nutrients. As they approached Marula, the massive elephant lifted her head, her eyes filled with exhaustion and fear. It's okay, girl, Ethan said softly, his voice steady. We're here to help. Gently, Sophia inserted the needle into Lainey's ear vein, securing the IV line. The tiny elephant flinched but didn't resist. Marula let out a deep, rumbling sound, her trunk resting protectively over her daughter. As the first drops of fluid entered Lainey's body, hope flickered in Sophia's eyes. But the team wasn't the only one watching. In the dense brush near the Montana-Wyoming border, Vince Holloway, known as Ghost, crouched low, his eyes fixed on the herd. His men, hidden in the shadows, whispered among themselves, waiting for his orders. This is it, Ray, Turner murmured, his gaze locked on the vulnerable calf. We strike before sunrise. Vince smirked, pulling a small knife from his belt. They care too much. That's their weakness. For poachers like them, patience was everything. The conservationists were occupied with Lainey, too distracted to notice what was creeping toward them. The plan was simple. isolate Laney, neutralize Marula if necessary, and disappear before the Rangers could react. A newborn elephant was worth a fortune, and in the underground market, a rare twin was even more valuable. "We move in an hour," Vince said, his voice cold. "Be ready." Back at the Yellowstone Ranger Station, Ethan felt his unease grow stronger. The wind had shifted, carrying with it an unfamiliar scent, sweat, metal, and something else. Danger. Before he could react, a loud crack echoed through the night. A flare exploded in the sky, bathing the land in a bright red glow. The herd erupted in panic. Marula let out a deafening trumpet, her massive frame shifting protectively over her calves. Tamu, startled, pressed against his mother, while Laney let out a weak, frightened cry. "They're here," David shouted, grabbing his rifle. From the darkness, figures emerged, silent, swift, and deadly. Vince and his men moved with precision, their weapons raised. One of them fired a dart. It struck Marula in the shoulder. She roared in fury, her body swaying as the tranquilizer took effect. But she was strong, too strong. Instead of collapsing, she charged. "Fall back," Ray shouted, but Vince refused to retreat. He lunged forward, rope in hand, ready to grab Laney. And then, a sound of pure fury. Marula, despite her exhaustion, launched herself forward, her tusks slashed through the air, missing Vince by inches. The ground shook beneath her as she trampled one of his men, sending him sprawling. "Abort," Ray yelled, but it was too late. The herd had responded. Dozens of elephants surged forward, their thunderous cries shaking the night. Dust and debris filled the air as the Rangers opened fire, warning shots aimed to scare, not kill. Vince snarled, knowing the mission was lost. "We're done here," he spat, disappearing into the trees. When the dust settled, the poachers were gone, but the damage was done. Laney trembled but was alive. Tamu pressed close, his small trunk wrapping around his sister in silent comfort. Ethan exhaled deeply. "We got lucky." Sophia, still shaking, looked at Laney. "What if they come back?" "They will," David said grimly, "but so will we." Across the wilderness, Vince sat near a dying fire. His jaw clenched. He pulled something from his pocket, a GPS tracker. From Laney's collar. "They can run," he murmured, watching the blinking red light. "But they can't hide." The first light of dawn crept over Yellowstone National Park, casting golden hues across the wilderness. The night had been brutal, but the Rangers and the herd had survived. Dr. Ethan Carter stood near the observation deck, his grip tight on his rifle. He hadn't slept. None of them had. Laney lay curled beside Marula, her tiny frame rising and falling with each shallow breath. Tamu stood close, his small trunk curling protectively around his sister. The herd, though shaken, remained a solid force around them, a testament to their resilience. Beside Ethan, Sophia Reed scanned the trees through her binoculars. The poachers had fled, but they were far from defeated. "They'll come back," she said, breaking the silence. David Mitchell, standing a few feet away, nodded grimly. "And we'll be ready." They had won the first battle, but the war wasn't over. Miles away, deep in the Montana-Wyoming border, Vince Holloway sat in his hideout, his face illuminated by the soft glow of a GPS tracker, the one he had stolen from Laney. The blinking red light told him everything he needed to know. "They're moving the herd." Ray Turner muttered, staring over Vince's shoulder, probably trying to get them to safer ground. Vince smirked. "They think they can outrun us." "We're outnumbered," Ray warned. "We barely made it out last time. Then we changed the plan." Vince leaned forward, his tone sharper. "We don't need both calves. We just need one." Ray hesitated. "You mean the weak one?" Vince said coldly. "Laney, she's worth more alive anyway." Silence hung between them before Ray gave a slow nod. "We move tonight." Back at Yellowstone, the Rangers prepared for the worst. Ethan had arranged for extra patrols, but they all knew it wouldn't be enough. "They'll come before nightfall," David predicted. "They'll try to take Laney. Then we make sure they don't," Sophia said fiercely. The plan was simple. Move the herd toward the deeper parts of Yellowstone. Away from open terrain, the trees would provide cover, and the Rangers would set up perimeters around the area. They wouldn't be caught off guard again. The afternoon sun bore down as they moved. Marula, despite her exhaustion, walked with unwavering strength. Tamu trotted beside his sister, as if sensing the danger ahead. Then, a sudden rustle in the trees. Ethan froze. Stop. The air grew tense. The elephants stirred uneasily, sensing something was wrong. And then, gunfire. A deafening shot rang through the air, and chaos erupted. The herd trumpeted in alarm. Marula swung her trunk wildly, shielding her calves as the rangers rushed to their positions. Ethan fired a warning shot into the air, but the poachers were already closing in. From the shadows, Vince emerged, his rifle raised. Step aside, Carter. Ethan stood his ground. You're not taking her. Vince smirked. I don't need your permission. A whistle from behind him, and suddenly Ray and two other men lunged forward, nets in hand, their target, Laney. But they had underestimated one thing. Marula, the matriarch, fueled by pure maternal rage, charged forward with the force of a landslide. Vince barely had time to react before her massive tusks sliced through the air, missing him by mere inches. One of his men wasn't as lucky. A single swipe from Marula's trunk sent him flying, his body crashing against a tree with a sickening thud. The herd responded instantly. Tamu, despite his size, let out a fierce trumpet, his tiny frame pressed close to his mother's. The other elephants surrounded Marula, forming a solid wall of flesh and muscle. But Vince wasn't done. With a snarl, he raised his rifle, aiming directly at Laney. A gunshot cracked through the air, but it wasn't Vince's. He staggered back, clutching his arm, blood seeping through his sleeve. David lowered his rifle, his face dark. That was a warning. Vince glared at him, but he knew it was over. His men were either down or retreating. The herd was too strong. The rangers were too prepared. With a final look at Laney, he spat onto the ground. This isn't over. Then he vanished into the trees, disappearing like a shadow into the night. The aftermath was silent. Laney, though frightened, was safe. Marula stood over her protectively, her massive body still trembling with adrenaline. The herd, though shaken, remained strong. Ethan exhaled deeply, watching the trees. They'll try again. Sophia wiped the sweat from her forehead. Then we'll be ready. For now, the battle was won. Days passed, and as the sun set over Yellowstone, something incredible happened. Laney, for the first time, took a full, steady step. She wobbled, but Tamu was there, nudging her encouragingly. The rangers watched in awe as she moved. No longer the fragile calf they had feared would not survive. She was strong. She had endured. And against all odds, she had won. As news of the attack spread, public outrage ignited. Donations poured in to fund more rangers and better equipment. Anti-poaching laws in the region strengthened, making operations like Vince's harder to pull off. And though the battle against poaching would never truly end, that night, in the heart of Yellowstone, one thing was certain. Laney and Tamu had survived, and their story would inspire generations to come. The story of Marula, Laney, and Tamu, a mother elephant and her rare twin calves, is a powerful reminder of resilience, love, and the ongoing battle between good and evil. Marula's unwavering determination to protect her babies teaches us that a mother's love is one of the most powerful forces in nature, capable of defying all odds. Laney, the fragile newborn elephant, symbolizes the struggle for survival, proving that with care, unity, and perseverance, even the weakest can overcome adversity. The fight between the rangers and Vince Holloway, the ruthless poacher, highlights the dark reality of illegal wildlife hunting and human greed. However, it also shows that courage, teamwork, and dedication can make a difference. Dr. Ethan Carter, David Mitchell, and Sophia Reed remind us that standing up for what is right, even in the face of danger, is a duty that must not be ignored. Evil may never fully disappear, but as long as there are people willing to fight for justice, hope will never be lost. More importantly, the story emphasizes that every life matters, whether human or animal. The world's ecosystems depend on balance, and it is our responsibility to protect and preserve wildlife. Public awareness and collective action can lead to real change, just as the world's support for Laney, the tiny elephant who defied the odds, strengthened conservation efforts. In the end, Laney's survival is more than just a victory for one elephant. It is a symbol of resilience, justice, and the power of fighting for what is right. Thank you for watching. I hope this story moved you and reminded you of the importance of protecting our wildlife. The fight against poaching is far from over, but with awareness and action, we can make a difference. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more emotional and powerful stories. Let's continue to spread the message and stand together for justice. See you in the next story.